Jesus spoke about money more often than he spoke about prayer, heaven or hell. You could say that money is a big deal to Jesus. On one occasion he said, "It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." There are various estimates on how many verses there are in the Bible on the subject of money and wealth. Some have said 2,000 verses. Someone counting differently said 5,000. Please forgive me, I'm not going to verify who's right and who's wrong. Life is too short. The statistics are not that important. Perhaps a more important question is, why did Jesus speak so much about money? The answer is that money is the number one rival to God for the human heart. God asks us to look to him, and he will fulfill our greatest desires. It's in him that our security is found. It's in him that we are to find our significance and our identity as his child. It's in him that we find freedom from all that enslaves us. It's in him that we find satisfaction and fulfillment. Yet money comes along and shouts for our attention. It says, look to me, and I will give you security. We have a saying about having a secure future, meaning to be financially well off. Money says, do you want significance? Then focus on me and I will make you feel that you are someone. I will make you feel important. Do you want identity? Then look to me and I will allow you to purchase it. I will enable you to choose the right house in the right neighborhood, and I will enable you to drive the right car and buy the right clothes to wear. If you want freedom, then earn enough to attain what the world calls financial freedom. If you want pleasure, it isn't God you need, it's me, because there is nothing that I cannot buy. If it's satisfaction and fulfillment you want, then buy the next thing that your heart desires. It's so subtle. Money promises those things that ultimately only God can give: security, significance, freedom, fulfillment, satisfaction, identity. Money is the number one rival to God for the human heart. Billy Graham, the great evangelist, said, if a person gets his attitude to money straight, then it helps to straighten out every other issue in his life. And if he's right, and I believe that he is, then this talk could be rather important for us all today. Materialism, consumerism, so woven into the fabric of Western society, and the cracks are showing. Did you know that the biggest area of tension in marital breakdowns is money? And spending faster than we earn is a major problem, both on the national level and the personal level. Many people feel crushed beneath personal debt and cannot see a way out, which is why our own More Than Food project is so important, as we help people pick up the pieces and to help families back to that financial equilibrium. In the first 18 months of this project, it has been our privilege to help 1,941 local people, providing them with financial gains of £882,000 through grants and enabling them to apply for government benefits to which they're entitled. In addition to that, another 270,000 has been written off in debt. Now, those numbers are already 3 months out of date. Tamworth Elim Church, we must not forget that this project and all our other projects are focused on what we're doing for God's kingdom, for his kingdom to come and his will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's all about his kingdom. Personal debt is often fueled by the advertising industry that is presently spending around £18 billion in the UK to tell us why we should buy their products. I'm sure you know the title of the best-selling book in the history of the world. It's the Bible. In fact, 100 million Bibles are sold around the world each year. But if you include catalogues as books, then the IKEA catalogue wins hands down. For IKEA produces 197 million catalogues in 20 languages in 61 editions, almost twice the number of Bibles being sold in a year. And that's just one company. The other thing that you need to take into account is that mail order catalogues are actually losing ground to internet sales. We are the wealthiest people who have ever lived on planet Earth. Yet when the University of Michigan conducted a survey asking one factor which would improve your quality of life, the most popular answer was more money. Leo Tolstoy, the Russian author of the epic War and Peace, once wrote a story, a much shorter story, about a successful peasant farmer who was not satisfied with his lot. He wanted more of everything, and one day he received a rather novel offer. For 1,000 rubles, he could buy all the land that he could walk around in a day. The only catch in the deal was that he had to be back at the starting point by sundown. Early the next morning, he started out walking as fast as he could. By midday, he was very tired but kept going, covering more and more ground. Well into the afternoon, he realized that his greed had taken him far from the starting point. He quickened his pace, and as the sun began to sink low in the sky, he began to run, knowing that if he did not make it back by sundown, the opportunity to become an even bigger landowner would be lost. As the sun began to sink below the horizon, he came within sight of the finish line. Gasping for breath, his heart pounding, he called on every bit of strength left in his body as he staggered across the line just before the sun disappeared. He immediately collapsed, blood streaming from his mouth. In a few minutes he was dead. Afterwards his servants dug a grave. It was not much more than 6 foot long and 3 feet wide. The title of Tolstoy's story was, "How Much Land Does a Man Need?" Let us read some rather well-known verses today in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 through to verse 24. "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate one and love the other, or will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Now these verses tell us three things, or should I say there are three questions from these verses. Question number one, where is our security? Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus identifies two different places where we can store up treasure, on earth or in heaven. The treasure that he speaks about is not only money, but essentially anything of value to us which is perishable. That is, anything that can be lost in one way or another. Money, possessions, clothes, homes, power, prestige, status, fame, popularity, sporting ability, good looks. The means by which the treasure is lost isn't important, whether it's through accident, through wrong decisions, aging, theft, putting your hard-earned cash in an Icelandic bank account, whatever. There are many ways that we can lose what we treasure. Jesus told a story, you probably know it well, found in Luke chapter 12, of a farmer who produced a bigger harvest than was expected. The farmer asks himself a question, what shall I do? I have nowhere to store my crops. He answers his own question, I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then he said to himself, then I will relax, eat, drink, and be merry for years to come. I'll enjoy my retirement. But God said to him, you fool, tonight you die, and your barn full of goods, who gets it? Then Jesus says, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. Jesus uses the phrase rich towards God, which means the same as treasures in heaven. But what does that phrase actually mean? It means essentially that we count God as our riches, that he is our great reward. He is our greatest treasure. He is the center of our lives, our focal point, our priority, our light, our hope, our song. He is the fire in our hearts. He is the wind in our sails. He's the reason that we live, our vision, our path, our guide. When Jesus speaks of not storing up treasures on earth, he is not suggesting that having money or to enjoy possessions is wrong. Jesus wasn't condemning wealth or that it is somehow wrong to make money or that it's wrong to save or enjoy the good things of life. He's not saying that at all, I believe. What Jesus is saying is deeper and more profound than that. Jesus is asking us to examine our own hearts. What is it, or better, who is it that motivates us? What is our attitude to life? Is it to serve God's purposes or to focus on ourselves? What do we spend most of our time thinking about? On what do we choose to spend our money? What or who captures our imagination? Where do we place our trust and our security? Do we hold the things of this life tightly or loosely in our hands? And our answers to those questions will help us to see where we are storing our treasures. But what does that really mean, to store up for yourselves treasures in heaven? It means that we will spend our time and our energy and our money on those things which outlast our lives. It will mean that we invest our lives in proclaiming that the good news of Christ, in caring for the weak and the lonely, in ministering to the poor. It means befriending the isolated and lonely, giving our lives to develop and disciple others to walk on that same journey. Paul writes to his spiritual son Timothy, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. You see, God isn't against us enjoying the things of this life as long as they don't win our hearts. Again, Paul writing to Timothy, he writes, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Jesus said that to store up treasures on earth is foolish because whatever we store can be lost. It's perishable. It can rust or spoil or fade or be destroyed or be stolen. But heavenly treasures are rust-proof, moth-proof, burglar-proof. They will endure forever. The Bible speaks of a life that will never end in John 3:16. A gift that will never be lost in John 6, verse 37 and 39. A love from which we will never be separated. Romans chapter 8, verse 39. A calling that will never be revoked. Romans 11:29. A foundation that will never be destroyed. 2 Timothy 2:19. And an inheritance that will never spoil or fade. 1 Peter 1, verses 4 and 5. I remember the evangelist J. John tell of the death of his father in Cyprus. It was a typical Mediterranean all-day funeral service and wake. And one of his father's friends asked him, did your father leave much? To which he answered, yes, he left everything. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Jesus is forbidding a materialistic outlook on life, which can apply as much to the person who hasn't got two brass halfpennies to rub together as to a millionaire. And when we recognize that our true home and our permanent residence is somewhere else, we will stop worrying about having it all on earth. It's a little bit like going on your summer holidays and buying a satellite system and new furniture for your holiday cottage in Skegness, which would be quite ludicrous. After the 2 weeks is up, you have to leave everything behind. It's your permanent home that you need to prioritize on, not your holiday accommodation. And this life, in comparison with what God has for us, is like a short summer break. We will enter our true home, the resurrection, the new creation, where we will be for all of eternity. The second question is, what kind of person are you becoming? Matthew chapter 6, verse 22. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Now, these words don't appear to follow easily. Jesus has just been speaking about storing up treasures in heaven and not on earth, and then starts talking about eyes. What Jesus is saying is this: if we have good eyes, we will walk in the light. For we need to be able to see in order to run, to jump, to drive a car, to cross the road, to cook, to embroider, to paint. And if your eyes are good, your whole body will be full of light. But Jesus is using this physical description to illustrate a spiritual truth. If we have physical vision, then we can see what we're doing and where we're going. And similarly, if we have spiritual vision, our life is filled with light and purpose and drive. However, at this, and this is the point that Jesus appears to be making here, it is possible for our spiritual vision to become clouded by materialism. That is, to have a materialistic outlook on life will blur our spiritual vision and cause us to become barren and unfruitful as Christian believers. And that is exactly what Jesus said in the parable of the sower. The one who receives the seed that fell among the thorns is the man who hears the words, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. The deceitfulness of wealth can choke our spiritual life, says Jesus. And that is where we started. Money is the number one rival to God for the human heart. Let me offer you a challenge. And the challenge is more towards the young and middle-aged people who are listening to this talk today. What kind of person are you becoming? Unless the Lord returns or you die, then one day you will become an elderly person. But the person we become in old age will largely depend on the decisions that we're making in life right now. Sit down and talk to an elderly person. Whatever they have focused on in their lives will naturally come out. If they focused upon their lives, upon possessions and their house, then that is the thing that will fill their conversation. If they live for their job or career, then that's what they will speak about. Their conversation will focus on the things, the stuff, the foreign holidays, the leisure activities, or even the football team that they've supported. Some might incessantly talk about themselves, their aches and their pains, and the people who have hurt and wronged them throughout life. But for those whose lives have been focused on God's kingdom, they will talk about the Lord and all that He is doing, and salvation and the power of prayer and the joy in seeing people becoming Christians. Such people are a great encouragement. They're a joy to be around. And there are so many examples that we have in our church. Everything that we sow into our lives now, we will later reap. The focus of our hearts will determine the person that we will become. And thirdly, the question of who do you serve? Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Jesus now explains that behind our choice of where we lay our treasures and fix our eyes is a still more basic choice between two masters. And which of them do we serve? In older versions of the Bible, the word mammon is used instead of money. Now, Jesus spoke Aramaic, and mammon was an Aramaic word. Mammon was the pagan god of wealth in Carthage, North Africa. And Jesus uses the term mammon as a personification of wealth and money, a rival deity, if you like. And it represents everything that deflects us from loving God with all of our hearts. Jesus did not say you should not serve God and money. He says you cannot. And yet many people try to do what Jesus said was impossible. For one of these masters will always have the upper hand in our lives. And when we make a decision, whatever decision it is, we will be guided by our values. And it often boils down to one of two things. We decide to do something because we seek to honour God and make him our priority. Or on the other hand, we make our decision on how it will materially benefit us. So how do we know whether we are lovers of money or lovers of God? Let me try to help you by asking 3 questions, and I'll finish with this. Firstly, what do I cut back when things get financially tight? Do I cut back on investing my wealth or money in God's kingdom, in serving others, in giving to the needy? Or do I cut back on my consuming? Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones once told the story of a farmer who had 2 calves. He told his wife that he was going to dedicate one to the Lord when it got older. He was planning on selling a calf and giving the money to the Lord's work. And one day he came in from the fields and said, "Bad news, the Lord's calf has just died." And it's often the Lord's calf that has just died when things get financially tight. Secondly, how does your heart feel when there's an opportunity to give? Maybe it's an opportunity to give to missions or to the persecuted church or some other local work. Does your heart almost resent the opportunity to give? Do you feel that you ought to give something, but do it with a sigh? Maybe when you look at your bank statement and you see that monthly debit entry for X amount of pounds to Tamworth Elim Church, do you joyfully praise God for the opportunity to invest in his kingdom and praise God for the fact that he has provided you with the ability to give generously? As someone once said, there are 3 sorts of giving. Duty giving, I give because I ought to. Grudge giving, I give because I have to. And thanksgiving, I give because I want to. And if you give with a thankful heart, not out of a begrudging duty, but out of a heart which is filled with God's grace, it is a good sign that the master that you serve is God himself. And the third question is, what are you counting on to secure a fulfilling life? In Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 10 it says, "Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income." And whilst money itself is neutral, and there can be and there's nothing wrong with having money or enjoying the good things in life, money will never bring satisfaction. There's only one antidote for materialism, and that antidote is generosity. Every time that you're generous, you have a spiritual victory in your heart. Every time you are generous, you break the grip of materialism in your life. Let me finish. In the Alpha course, we are introduced to a gentleman named Scott Harrison. He tells his story of how God changed his life from being a man who stored up treasures on earth to a man who stored up treasures in heaven. And by using his skills, he benefited 5.5 million people. I hope that you find his story inspiring. Please click the hyperlink and be inspired by this short video. God bless. Have a great week.